Okay. Now, I still have, I don't know, about 10, 11 minutes left in tonight's program. So let me mention the sitting governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, this miserable bastard. He issued a pardon for a killer who shot a Black Lives Matter protester. Now, let me state right up front here that everybody in the story is white. It was not a Black Lives Matter protester. It was a white Black Lives Matter protester. And it happened last Thursday. This convicted murderer who was serving a 25-year sentence was set free in Texas. He wasn't set free because of DNA analysis determined he was innocent. No. And as Frank Figliuzzi, who is a former FBI person and MSNBC columnist now, he says neither was there some legal technicality that was raised on appeal. No. The guy's name was Daniel Perry, and he was an active duty Army sergeant at the time he committed the murder. And he never argued or disputed that he shot and killed a 28-year-old Air Force veteran named Garrett Foster in front of multiple witnesses during a 2020 Black Lives Matter protest in Austin, Texas. However, Mr. Perry, the killer, was pardoned by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, which is what Abbott promised to do the day after the jury in this case issued their verdict. And according to the Houston Chronicle, this, quote, Thursday was the first time in at least decades that a Texas governor has pardoned someone for a serious violent crime, let alone murder. Now, Abbott had promised to free this killer, even though a Texas grand jury indicted him and a jury of Perry's peers in Texas convicted him. But the sitting governor of Texas promised a pardon before the pardon board, whose members he appoints, before the pardon board issued its findings. And the governor was under pressure to issue the pardon from a number of high-profile American Nazis, among them Tucker Carlson, him again. And according to the Houston Chronicle, last Thursday, as I mentioned, it was the first time in decades that a Texas governor pardoned someone for something like murder. Now, adding to the obviously highly charged political nature of this pardon, Governor Abbott was scheduled to address the NRA conference this weekend, along with the orange bastard Donald Trump. Did you see any of that? It's over now. It happened this past weekend. Did you see any of the video clips from this fucking Nazi Donald Trump, what he was saying to these sorry son of a bitches who are members of the NRA? The NRA is not an organization designed to teach gun safety. That's what it was when I was a member back in the 60s, when I was very young. I had my first .22 rifle, and I thought, oh boy, I'm going to join the National Rifle Association. And I got a card, and I used to get their bulletin and read about them in the magazine Guns and Ammo, and but it was all about gun safety and proper hunting methods. And I still thought back then, having been brought up in Ohio, that I was going to be a deer hunter at some point, yada, 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 yada. But the National Rifles Association now is nothing more or less than an organization whose sole purpose is to overthrow the government of the United States and establish a sick, fucked up Christian fascist government. So it's not surprising that Trump and the sitting governor of Texas would be featured speakers. Anyway, according to Garrett Foster's mother. Now, Garrett Foster is the man who was murdered. According to his mother, he attended the Black Lives Matter demonstrations day after day And what motivated this guy to do it was the same thing that motivated me and my daughter here in Atlanta to do the same thing. The injustice of the Minneapolis police officer killing of George Floyd. And as Frank points out, ironically, the victim's mother, Foster's mother, described Foster as a Second Amendment advocate. And witnesses say that Foster was carrying a rifle on a strap around his neck the day he was shot dead. Now, the person who killed him, Perry, drove his car up to a crowd of protesters who surrounded his vehicle because it was obvious that he was there to disrupt. And from inside his car, the killer, Perry, drew a handgun and fired at Garrett Foster. Most of the witnesses describe Foster as having his rifle slung tight to his chest and pointed down at the ground with his finger off the trigger. Witnesses say they never saw the victim raise his firearm and point it towards the killer, Perry. Yet those details didn't matter to Abbott or the pardon board. They said that the victim's weapon was in what's referred to as the low ready gun position. Barrel down, finger off the trigger, yada, yada. Which was enough to call Perry's action, the killer's actions, self-defense? I mean, that, of course, is utter bullshit because Perry never claimed Foster was pointing his rifle at him. Perry, the killer, told police, quote, "I believe he was going to aim his rifle at me. I didn't want to give him a chance," end quote. No, come on. If you say you shot someone you thought might eventually, possibly aim a weapon at you, that's not self-defense. It's an admission that you weren't being threatened when you decided to commit murder. And if the killer didn't shoot Garrett Foster out of self-defense, then what was his motivation? During the trial, prosecutors presented messages that the killer sent before the shooting, and some of the messages talked of wanting to kill Muslims, wanting to kill black people, wanting to kill protesters. And some of the message included, let me share a couple with you here. This is from the shooter, Perry. Quote, "I might have to kill a few people on my way to work. They are rioting outside my apartment complex." And then another comment, quote, "It is official I'm a racist because I do not agree with people acting like animals at the zoo." And then another one, quote, "I might go to Dallas to shoot looters." Another one, "No protesters go near me or my car," end quote. Now Perry, the killer, who is white and was in the active military when he shot Mr. Foster, who was also white and a military veteran, both were legally carrying their weapons that day. How about that? So this isn't about Garrett Foster's skin color, just as it wasn't about a legally accepted self-defense claim. That is bullshit too. But for both these people, Perry, the killer, and Abbott, the governor, this murder and the subsequent pardon now were about the cause that Garrett Foster was involved in. Black Lives Matter. And who Mr. Foster chose to associate with. Other demonstrators who were marching in Austin, just like Malloy and I were marching in Atlanta, or you might have been marching someplace. The governor, the sitting governor, Abbott, setting Mr. Perry free, suggested in Texas it's open season on protesters whose cause is not approved by the governor. And Texans are known for valuing at least two things, their freedom and their guns. But with this pardon, as Frank Figliuzzi mentioned, Texans should wonder whether their constitutional right to peacefully protest and to lawfully carry a weapon depend on what they're protesting and who's carrying the weapon. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.